What's going on, creeps? Back again with you for another one of our fun little venture videos. Now, I was going to move forward from where we were at Spanakopita, because I know I promised to dig in beginning at Season 6, but I went back on into Season 5, and, well, I figured since we are Horrid lore, since we are Horrid lore, that we got to give you a little feedback on the Halloween episode since we're 2 days out from Halloween. And, you know, I watched it again and looked into it, and the Halloween special actually had a lot of new shit thrown at us that, thinking back on it in this season, kind of actually began to really pertain. Specifically in Dean finding Ben's cabin. So, without any further ado, let's just dig right in here. I would be completely remiss if I didn't mention the beginning and how fucking... It's probably one of my favorite Halloween jokes ever. How it starts, the first one is probably back in like Season 1, with Hank and Dean trying to scare Rusty and Brock's still their bodyguard at that point, obviously, and they just have a regular haunted bedroom, and Hank's dressed up as Dracula, and he has blood for them to drink, and obviously doesn't yield too much chills. And then the next one, they try scaring him again with an Egyptian mummy, but again, they're met with, fucking no response. And then the third year, Rusty goes into the room, and they really upped the ante this time, and tried making it out like the fucking bookcase had fallen over, and that the boys were dead. But once again, Rusty is just fucking completely unfazed and yells to Brock to heat up some more slugs, because they still had clones at that point, obviously. And then we get into the final one, which finally yields an effect. Rusty walks into his room, but his sons aren't doing a haunted bedroom this time. This time, they have an email set up on the computer about a malignant lump that Rusty has, that he was waiting to hear back about. Dean says that he has an STD, and Sergeant Hatred comes down saying that there's a leak in the fucking ceiling. So this obviously puts Doc on the edge of a fucking complete meltdown until they finally reveal that it is a Halloween prank and that Rusty is able to get got on Halloween. It just takes some thinking. Because since Hatred was so in on the joke, I'm assuming that he must have kind of pioneered this one, since it didn't seem like Brock was ever too keen on helping them try and scare Doc. But then once they got Hatred in the mix, they got him. So I think that there's a good chance that good old Uncle Hatred had a lot to do with that little Halloween mischief. Alright, now moving along into the meaty episode. Dermot comes into the house after their... Alright, so let me just start here by saying this episode always fucked me up time-wise. This episode takes place during the fucking Season 5 premiere, that 40-minute special. This episode takes place in that same, 2 or 3 month time frame when they were doing Project Palemon. And, like I said, what color is your clean suit? So, that clears all that up if you were wondering about the time frame of this episode, like I was. So, back in the Venture compound, Dermot comes into the house, without knocking or anything like that, dressed as the Crow, because Dermot is Dermot. I mean, at this point, Dermot is just an adjective for all of those douchey kids that would have dressed up as the Crow when I was younger. And when he comes in so abruptly, Rusty fucking, without even looking at him, demands that he go back to the front door and ring the doorbell. And Dermot listens, but he seems pretty pissed off about it. And Dr. O asks him why he's so rough on the boy, to which Rusty says, "I have my reasons." And now we officially know. Well, we don't officially know, but we all but officially know that at this point in Season 7, Dermot almost definitely knows that Rusty is his actual dad. So when he comes back and rings the doorbell, he sees fucking Dean and Hank, and this is the first time we see Dean with his new alternative, quote-unquote, emo look, and the three of them go out to play some Halloween hijinks in the form of going out into the woods and going to Old Man Potter's house, which is supposedly haunted. Which Dean does not want to do at all because their good old pop, Rusty, had warned them never to go out there. And obviously Hank and Dermot call him a fucking pussy and force him to go in anyway. Proving that they were almost definitely more afraid to do it than Dean even was. Because they themselves refused to go inside of the house and just let Dean go in on his own. As soon as Dean goes inside, he's attacked by this weird apish creature and he's rendered unconscious. And when he wakes up, he meets an old man, who is a very significant old man, who was voiced by J.K. Simmons, who is now an Oscar winner, and I'm assuming that's why they weren't able to get him back for that episode in the new season. Which isn't that surprising, but it is a little upsetting. Because I did hear an interview where they said that they wanted to get somebody back, but they just weren't able to. I'm assuming it was probably him. But this man is Old Ben, not Ben Potter. He tells them that they think the place is called Old Man Potter's house merely because it's a graveyard, so it's a potter's field. And if you didn't know, a potter's field is... Let me look up the actual definition. A burial place for paupers and strangers. So, I mean, in this case, I think it's more of a... I think it's from the Black Plague, because it's just basically a makeshift mass grave for a bunch of people that they gotta dump that they can't do anything with. And if you couldn't guess who they would need to be burying in such mass quantities in that backyard, just think of all those times where Brock had to kill some guy. And think about all the fucking times that the old classic Team Venture probably killed plenty of people. Especially with everything that we know now about Jonas. And all the clones that died. So I'm sure it's plenty full out in that potter's field. And again, I would be remiss. This doesn't really have to do with the story that I'm talking about, but it is definitely one of my favorite pop culture references, maybe ever, not even just in this show. It's at the Halloween party that Dr. Orpheus is throwing with all of the mystic characters in the Ventureverse. And the Outrider and Dr. O's ex-wife Tatiana, who obviously have some fucking like crazy kinky sex life because she left Dr. O because he was so goddamn boring. They take everybody to... what the fuck? Hell, I guess from the Hellbound Heart, Hellraiser, and they're encountered by fucking Venture Bros Cenobites that have fucking toaster faces and are imploring everyone to taste their pleasure toast. I just think that it's fucking phenomenal, and I really thought that it was worth mentioning, even if it was a little bit of a sidetrack. Alright, now back inside of old Ben's house. So, it turns out that Ben was the scientist who helped Jonas Venture Sr. crack the fucking code or whatever for figuring out how to create clones. So, that is who old Ben is, and when Dean finds this out, knowing that he's a fucking clone, he thinks that he's some kind of freakish experiment, but like Ben says, he was just a, drunken accident when Rusty forgot to wear a condom, and that Dean and Hank are clones, but it's just basic, like he says, is a fucking Band-Aid. They have all these fucking freak accidents happen to them because they live such a high-profile life with a super scientist, so he just needs some freakish Band-Aids to put them back together. And Ben reassures him that he is the one and only Dean, and that they really only used the cloning methods as a means for protecting him. Like I said, big Band-Aid. Because the boy adventurer lifestyle is no joke, as we found out in this newest season that Rusty is almost definitely also a clone. Dean finally calms down after this, kind of having a little existential meltdown, but Ben kind of reels him in a little bit, and Dean becomes more of the Dean that we have come to know. The Dean who is very introspective and highly aware of everything going on, contrary to almost everyone else in the Ventureverse. And we really get to see this because in the after credits scene, Hank comes to check on him to see if he's okay after the night in the haunted house. And Dean wants to tell him the truth, but he knows that Hank is too fragile for it. That Hank... He tries to save Hank the pain and anguish that he's feeling and doesn't tell Hank. And I think that kind of also ties back in together with how much Dean really does love Hank, but doesn't really know how to express it and doesn't really know his brother too well. And vice versa. So I think that's the one nice little spot we can put our finger down in this one episode, is that it really shows us who the Venture Brothers have blossomed into more than almost anything has. Well, at least before season 7, we really kind of haven't been told what was going on with the boys until we heard Dean's crap brother list in the finale. Alright, well, I'm sorry if I got off track a little bit too much because of my excitement for Halloween, but I promise I'll be back next week with more shit from Season 6. I promise this time that it will be Season 6 and forward, and by Season 6, I mean Aldous and Gargantua too. So, until tomorrow, creeps, we're going to have a new episode of the podcast out, And if you're not going to hear that, then until next week for another lovely Venture video. Till then, Doc out.